Spoonman.
Tonight, dear listener, we go to war. It's ironic that just 2 days ago we paused to remember those who've died fighting wars to protect our freedoms and our democracy, our rights to choose. But today the threat to those values and rights is not from any external force, no foreign country, but from our own federal government. In this case, the battlefield is the internet. The trenches are our ISPs, and our only available weapon is your home computer. I'll be urging you to take up the fight during tonight's show. Now, as you may or may not be aware, the Rudd government set aside $128.5 million to filter or block internet content that is, under Australian law, illegal. The government claims the plan's designed to prevent Australians from accessing child pornography. But in reality, once the issues have all played out, both technically and politically, it's entirely possible that the bans would affect anything the government deemed inappropriate. And we, the internet users of Australia, wouldn't have a clue what we're not able to access. It is possible that the blacklist that the government's going to draw up would apply to porn, websites advocating changes to voluntary euthanasia or indeed drug laws, maybe online gaming sites. Bloggers and independent journos sites could also be blocked, just to mention a few. And for those of you who get around the lack of an R18 classification for video games by downloading them from the net, you're going to find those sites on the government blacklist as well. Now, the blacklist of websites will be held by the Australian Communication and Media Authority, otherwise known as ACMA. It's rumoured to contain around 10,000 websites. The list will be supplied to the 400-odd internet service providers. They'll be forced to prevent you from accessing the sites on that list. The cyber safety plan, as the government calls it, is in reality nothing more than a censorship of the internet. And despite noises from the now Federal Communications Minister, Senator Stephen Conroy, during the last election campaign, there will be no capacity to opt out of the scheme. Instead, there's going to be two levels of censorship. The first is the blanket ban of sites the government determines to be inappropriate. The second level will allow individual users to block access to ordinary porn sites, for example, to stop kids looking at them. Critics of the plan are making the following points. The government simply has not made a case for the need for such a censorship of the internet. We already have the capacity to download a free net nanny type software at the user end to prevent children from accessing pornography. It cost $84 million of your money to develop, was hacked in 30 minutes by a 16-year-old, and the take-up rate so far has been pathetically low. Most of the people who did decide to download it no longer use it. IT experts and the government's own figures show that internet speed, should this plan get up, will be reduced by at least 2% at best and more than 80% at worst. Remember, Kevin Rudd's Labor government spending another $10 billion of your money to develop a high-speed broadband network, but seems intent on sabotaging it before it's even established. Those same experts also point to a number of flaws in the plan. For example, peer-to-peer protocols, which account for up to about 60% of internet traffic, can't be blocked under the government's plan. Other encryption protocols are already available, which can render users invisible to any authorities, including the Australian Federal Police. No doubt the disgusting child porn producers will be using these protocols already. Critics also claim that this censorship will put Australia in the same league as China, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. So tonight, I'm going to dedicate a good slab of the show to finding out exactly what's going on and why we need to take a stand and fight this attack on our so far uncensored internet. In the interest of fairness, I made a number of approaches to the Federal Communications Minister, Stephen Conroy, to come on the show tonight and explain his position. Late this afternoon, I received a reply from his media advisor. The Senator is not available to talk. Not surprising, given how low-key the government wants to keep this issue. One of those advisory groups that the government can discreetly ignore whenever they feel like it. Now, when I mentioned that we were going to do this subject, I got a raft of emails from experts working in the industry who are listeners in their spare time. One of those is Matthew Black, who's an IT professional. I've got to tell you, has more letters after his name. He's got an MBA, he's got a Bachelor of Science degree, he's got all sorts of diplomas, and he is a member of the he's a senior member of the Australian Computer Society website, which is the usual number of W's, peregrineit.net. His name is Matthew Black. G'day, Matthew. Hi.
G'day, Spoonman. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, my friend. Now, just I am not an IT expert by any stretch of the imagination. I get a general gist of how the system works and roughly what goes on. Tell me, Matthew, specifically, what are the technical limitations with the plan the government is putting forward?
Yeah, can talk about that. Just before I do, let me point out that I'm speaking not on behalf of the ACS, or on behalf of Sage AU, which is the other peak body in Australia. I'm talking tonight as a private individual with knowledge in this area. So I just want to make that plain.
Understand, Matthew. No problem.
Right. Look, there's a number of ways around the system. For starters, as the plan has been put forward by the Minister at the moment, they're going to be filtering only, at this stage, web traffic. Now, web traffic only makes up about a third of the internet traffic that is out there at the moment.
What's the rest of it, Matthew?
The rest of it is peer-to-peer sharing via, say, things like BitTorrent. It's email. It's encrypted web traffic, which is different again, and things of that nature. There's a whole raft of different bits and pieces that we call the internet. And the World Wide Web pages is only roughly about a third of that.
So there's a massive capacity for those who do wish to transmit material that the government would deem inappropriate to do so beyond the scope of their plan.
Oh, certainly. That's one of the main faults of the plan that the government's put forward so far.
Okay, what about the effect of the speed of the internet, Matthew? And we need to background this with, of course, the concept that the federal government's spending $10 billion of our money to create a high-speed broadband network, which they seem intent on choking before it even gets up. What sort of effect do you really will think it has on internet speeds, for example?
Well, the government's own pilot program report specified that some of the filters that they're looking at actually slow down the internet by up to 87%. So call it 80%, call it 4/5. That's the first step. Now, that particular filter, the one that does slow down the internet the most, is also the one that's the least effective at the filtering.
What about the most effective end, Matthew? What sort of slowdown are we talking about there for the package, the process that manages to catch more of the websites that they're looking for?
Sorry, I just misspoke. Let me rephrase that. The filtering system that slows down the internet the most is the one that is the most effective. My fault.
I see. Okay, so most effective but slows down. That's what I was trying to get at. Okay, that makes sense.
Sorry, I misspoke. So yeah, but even the most effective filter still lets through roughly 2% of the stuff it should be stopping, and it stops roughly 3% of the stuff it should not be stopping. Now, to put that in perspective, some estimates put it that there are 2 billion, that's billion with a B, 2 billion websites out there. So 3% of 2 billion is 60,000 legitimate websites that will be inappropriately stopped or blocked or censored, if you prefer that term.
And they could be relatively innocent, say, health-related websites, for example, that get caught up because of a keyword?
Exactly. I mean, the classic example everybody uses is sites about breast cancer. The word breast, obviously, can be used both medically and also for pornographic reasons. And so that's one word that's one example of a potential site that will be blocked inadvertently.
So clearly, Matthew, at the end of the day, what we're talking about here, in terms of the optimal system for parents or others concerned about the type of content appearing on their home PC, it is a PC-based software package like a Net Nanny that has nothing to do with blocking anything at the ISP level.
That's correct. And what makes this argument so interesting is that if parents want to have a filtered internet feed, that's available in the market right now. There are ISPs out there that provide this feed. WebShield, for example, is a perfect example. Also, the last government, the Liberal government, made available free of charge, and it's still free of charge, I might add, a whole bunch of PC-based filtering that parents could download from netalert.org.gov.au, I think is the website. I'll check that out for you. So no matter if parents want to filter the internet at their own PC, they can do so for free. If they want to subscribe to a filtered internet link, it's already available. Why is this being forced on the rest of us when there's no call for it? That's my question.
And as I understand it, the one the government developed last year that you're referring to, there was roughly, if I'm not mistaken, around about 140,000 downloads of that. But subsequent figures indicated that a very small percentage of those people are still actually actively using it.
That's correct. Look, bottom line is the point of view that I have and a lot of others have is that there's actually no problem to deal with in the first place.
To filter or block internet content that is, under Australian law, illegal. The government claims the plan's designed to prevent Australians from accessing child pornography. But in reality, once the issues have all played out, both technically and politically, it's entirely possible that the bans would affect anything the government deemed in.
Spoonman.
Tonight, dear listener, we go to war. It's ironic that just 2 days ago we paused to remember those who've died fighting wars to protect our freedoms and our democracy, our rights to choose. But today the threat to those values and rights is not from any external force, no foreign country, but from our own federal government. In this case, the battlefield is the internet. The trenches are our ISPs, and our only available weapon is your home computer. I'll be urging you to take up the fight during tonight's show. Now, as you may or may not be aware, the Rudd government set aside $128.5 million as an independent journo sites could also be blocked, just to mention a few. And for those of you who get around the lack of an R18 classification for video games by downloading them from the net, you're going to find those sites on the government blacklist as well. Now, the blacklist of websites will be held by the Australian Communication and Appropriate, and we, the internet users of Australia, wouldn't have a clue what we're not able to access. It is possible that the blacklist that the government's going to draw up would apply to porn, websites advocating changes to voluntary euthanasia or indeed drug laws, maybe online gaming sites, bloggers,